Did anyone else kind of notice the timing of this Russian election interference thing? New Year's Eve, like, come on, talk about trying to bury a story. I
Right.
mean, I was personally a little too busy trying to decide if I had room for another slice of pie,
Uh-huh.
but this is pretty big, right?
Yeah.
So today, we're going to do a deep dive into what we actually know. We've got this Reddit thread just packed with opinions and questions.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And we're going to be cross-referencing that with the official US Treasury Department announcement. No speculation, no opinions, just the facts. That's how we do things here on the Deep Dive.
Exactly.
You deserve clear, unbiased information.
That's what we're here for, to give you all the tools you need to really understand this stuff.
Absolutely. So the Treasury Department says Russia interfered with the 2024 election, but like what they actually do.
Well, they say Russia used two main tactics. The first one was they used generative AI to spread disinformation.
Okay, I know AI is like everywhere these days, but how is it being used to like mess with elections? That sounds super high tech.
It is. Generative AI can basically create content that's like almost impossible to tell from real stuff. Fake news articles, videos, even audio recordings that sound totally authentic.
Oh, wow.
In this case, Russia was allegedly using these AI tools to create and spread false information to voters. It's like a whole other level of sophistication we haven't really seen before.
And that's not even all of it, right? There's also, the Treasury Department statement also mentioned a doctored video of a vice presidential candidate.
Yeah, and they don't actually say which candidate. The Reddit thread has a lot of people thinking it might be Vance, based on some of the, the rumors that have been going around.
Speaking of rumors, there's that whole sofa stuff with Vance that's, been all over online. Is that what the Treasury Department is talking about?
No, that seems to be unrelated. The Treasury Department is talking about a totally different thing with that manipulated video.
Good to know. So let's talk about how they did it. The press release specifically mentions the GRU. I think most of our listeners probably know, but can you give a quick reminder of what the GRU even is?
Sure. The GRU is Russia's main military intelligence agency. It's kind of like their version of the CIA. The Treasury Department thinks that they were the ones behind all of this.
Okay, and then there's also this organization, they call it the Center for Geopolitical Expertise, or CGE. What's their role?
So the CGE is supposedly, it's like a think tank based in Moscow. It's headed by a guy named Valery Korovin. The Treasury Department says that they were the ones using the AI to make all the fake content and then spreading it through all these websites made to look like real news sources.
Wow.
Think about that they made entire websites just to push this disinformation.
That's wild. That takes a lot more effort than I would have thought.
Yeah, definitely.
They also mentioned that the CGE built their own server to host all this stuff.
Yeah.
Why would they go through all that trouble? Why not just use GoDaddy or something?
Right. Well, that's what makes it so interesting. By building their own server, they were trying to stay hidden, trying to avoid detection.
Oh, okay.
If they just used some regular service, their activity might have been flagged and possibly shut down.
Yeah.
It really shows how much planning and technical expertise went into this.
So pretty sophisticated then.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
And that brings up a really important question. Did it work?
Hmm?
Did they actually manage to sway the election with any of this? That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it's one that's practically impossible to answer for sure.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to think about how much impact disinformation can have, even on people who think they know better.
Right. There were some comments in this Reddit thread from people who consider themselves really careful about what they believe.
Yeah.
But even they were tricked by some of the AI stuff.
It's scary, isn't it? It just goes to show you how powerful this stuff can be, especially when it's playing on our biases. Like, we all want to believe things that fit with what we already think, even if they're not true. And when you add AI making things look super real, it gets even harder to tell what's what.
It's almost like our brains are just wired to be tricked.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole thing, if you repeat a lie enough, it becomes the truth. People were talking about that in the thread too, how repetition and confirmation bias can really solidify those false beliefs.
Yeah. And it's not just about changing individual votes either. Disinformation can really mess with our trust in institutions, in each other.
Yeah.
Even in democracy itself, it creates division and apathy, and that can lead to lower voter turnout.
That point about apathy really stuck with me. Reading through the Reddit thread, you can definitely tell people are feeling kind of disillusioned, like they're losing faith in the whole system.
Right.
They're like, what's the point of voting if elections can be messed with like this?
Yeah, I get that. We're living in a world where information is being weaponized,
Hmm.
and that's a huge problem. It's a problem for democracies everywhere and really for anyone who's just trying to, like, make good decisions.
So what can we even do about it? The Treasury Department announced sanctions against the CGE and this Korovin guy, but is that really going to do anything? A lot of the Redditors aren't so sure. They're pointing out that sanctions haven't really worked before.
You're right, people are debating how effective they'll be, but I think even if they don't actually stop future interference, the fact that the U.S. is acknowledging the problem and doing something is significant. It raises awareness and puts pressure on governments and tech companies to find better solutions.
So it's a step in the right direction at least. But what about us? Like, just normal people.
Right.
Knowing how sophisticated these disinformation campaigns are, what can WE do to protect ourselves? How can we stay informed without getting, like, sucked into all the craziness?
That's the big question we should all be asking. We can't just sit back and passively take in information anymore. We have to be active and think critically about everything.
Yeah, critical thinking is key. Honestly, reading through that thread, I realized how many people, like even myself, were kind of fooled by some of this stuff. It's so well made, it's easy to see how people fall for it.
It's designed to use our weaknesses against us, our
Yeah.
biases, our desire for easy answers.
Yeah.
But there are things we can do to defend ourselves. It starts with having a healthy amount of skepticism.
Right.
Don't just believe everything you see online.
Hmm.
Check the sources, make sure it's coming from somewhere reputable, and be careful with super sensational headlines or stuff that's trying to get a big emotional reaction out of you.
So don't just read the headline, actually look into it a bit. Another thing that came up a lot in the thread was making sure you're getting information from lots of different sources.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Don't just stick to the same social media feeds and news outlets. Look around, get different perspectives.
It's easy to get stuck in an echo chamber where you're only seeing things that agree with you.
Right.
When you look at things from different angles, you can challenge your own assumptions and get a more balanced view.
It's like that saying, you are what you eat. But for information, if you're only getting one kind of content, your understanding of the world's going to be pretty limited.
Exactly. And you got to pay attention to how you're feeling, too.
Hmm.
Disinformation often plays on fear and anger.
Mm-hmm.
If you find yourself getting worked up about something you're reading, take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it critically.
Right.
Maybe even walk away for a bit and come back later.
That's good advice. And last but not least, don't be afraid to have those hard conversations with your friends and family who might be spreading misinformation.
Yes.
Even if it feels awkward, if you see someone sharing something that seems fishy, don't just ignore it. Start a conversation. Ask questions. Encourage them to think about it more critically.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about attacking anyone. It's about building a culture of critical thinking and healthy skepticism.
Well said. This has been a real eye-opener for me, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking about doing a whole deep dive just on strategies for navigating this crazy information landscape.
I think that's a great idea. The more we learn about how to tell fact from fiction, the better we'll be at protecting ourselves and our democracy.
Yeah, it really is kind of scary to think about how easy it is to manipulate people with this stuff. Makes you wonder about what'll happen to democracy, you know?
Yeah.
If these disinformation campaigns can actually sway elections, what does that mean for, like, our ability to actually make informed choices?
It's a question a lot of people are asking.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to remember that being aware of the problem is the first step.
Okay.
The fact that we're talking about this now, that we're even bringing up these issues, that's huge. The more we understand the threats we're up against, the better we'll be at dealing with them.
Right. Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And it's not just up to governments and tech companies to figure this out. It's on all of us to be informed and engaged citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Citizens who think critically about the information they see.
So, like, zooming in on that, what can we actually do to fight back against disinformation and protect elections?
Well, you've already mentioned some key things. Being skeptical, checking sources, getting information from lots of different places,
Right.
and having those tough conversations with people who might be spreading misinformation.
Right.
Those are all super important. And I think it also comes down to understanding that we're not just sitting here passively absorbing information. We have a choice. We can choose what we consume, what we share, how we act online.
So being more mindful, more intentional with our online behavior.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a tech expert or anything like that to make a difference. Every time you fact check something, every time you decide to get your news from somewhere new, every time you have a good conversation with someone who's maybe been misled, you're helping to build a more informed and resilient society.
Those small actions can really add up then.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel powerless when you think about these big problems.
Right.
But ultimately, protecting our democracy is up to all of us.
It's a team effort, and everyone's contribution matters.
This deep dive has been fascinating and a little bit scary, to be honest. But I think it's a conversation we all need to be having. So to everyone listening, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Your voice and your actions matter a lot more than you think. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.